Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when this finds you. Hope your day's been great so far. If you haven't started, hope your day's gonna be great. I decided to re-record this particular video um, instead of releasing the original recording. And as I speak later on, you'll understand why. Because I'm gonna get into some personal stuff a little bit later. In the initial recording of this video, my emotions took over. I was speaking from the heart. My emotions started to get the best of me, and I got teary-eyed. My voice started cracking, and then anger took over. So I decided not to release that version of the video, and so I had to do some cleaning up from the original version because I want to talk about degreed professionals, and I'm not minimizing degreed professionals, but society just happens to look upon uh, degreed professionals as the only movers and shakers in society. And see, society sadly always wants to look toward those who have paper credentials only. And if we're black, or what we term as black, for some strange reason we feel that our paper credentials have to impress white folks more than anything else. And if our credentials impress white people, we don't care what other blacks think. And did you ever think about that? I mean, white people are always the ones who say you as a black person have to have paper credentials that they must verify before you will be accepted by them. I mean, when I wrote the book, But Hey, What Do I Know? I mentioned how we had scores of black men and women who were achieving massive success, massive wealth back in the day. And then W.E.B. Du Bois and his talented 10th crew felt that blacks should strive to get recognized by white America and work to get hired as an employee at white owned companies instead of building our own companies. I mean, who's going to do a better job of employing us at decent wages? And see, these same blacks in this thought process put black business owners down for not having paper credentials. Now, don't take my word for nothing. I always tell you all the time, do your own research. But you know why? You know why they did that? Because the so-called educated blacks had nothing but paper credentials and no real work experience, no real no real wealth. And those business owners, the uneducated business owners with no paper credentials, had a lot of money and had a lot of success, but they had no paper credentials. So what these Negroes did, they first created the Niagara movement that was full of paper credentialed people. The Niagara movement was basically a bust, and because of this, it dissolved quickly. And the members of the movement were scooped up by the NAACP, which is and has always been a non-black organization. What has paper credentials gotten us as a people in society as a whole? Look at education. The professionals with PhDs have destroyed education. Look at the mess we have here in Texas alone. A few years back, the state had to take over the Beaumont School District because of what degree professionals had done. And I personally know the superintendent that was in charge when it happened. The problem was created before they gave him a position, and that's what they always do. They destroy something and didn't want to put a black man in charge. But I knew him when he was an elementary school principal, personally. And he and I had a real good relationship years ago. And, I wasn't going down to Bowman as much, so, we kind of lost touch and, still have his phone number. We just hadn't touched base in a while. But the state took over the Beaumont School District because of what degree professionals had done. Almost a year ago, the state of Texas took over the largest school district, which is located here in Houston. And, everyone's upset at the man in charge and the governor. Well, they don't need anything is a reason for them to get mad at the governor down here. If he come out and say, today's cloudy, even though the day might be cloudy. Black folks especially come out and say, well, who told him he could say it was cloudy? That's just the way blacks are. Anything that's not Democrat. And, they ain't figured out how to move away from that indoctrination yet. They still think Democrats got our best interests in hand. Democrats have always been a party of racism back then and still right today. But, I'm not even here to talk about that. But the state of Texas had been telling the school district since 2017 if they did not fix the issues, they were going to take over. So they had been given 6 years to fix things as degreed professionals, and they didn't correct it. In January 2024, just not too long ago, the state of Texas took over La Jolla School District, which is also here in Texas as well. So degree professionals have destroyed the school district here in Texas. So I can only imagine what they look like over the rest of the country. Degree professionals could not get these situations fixed. Well, it's kind of hard to fix something when you cause the destruction of it in the first place. See, I got to return to time. And I mean, I have a whole lot of personal stories. I could tell you stories and stories on top of stories, on top of stories, on top of stories about things that I've experienced, things that have happened to me in my life. Just as an adult, I don't even need to go back to when I was growing up as a child. But I was contacted by a degreed professional with her PhD here in the Houston area. And she worked for this largest school district here. And she called me in so I could prove to her that I was qualified to do public speaking in schools that I had already been speaking in for about 3 to 4 years at the time. And I go into the office and she starts telling me about her educational credentials. So, she told me about her husband's educational and professional credentials. So, she told me about both her sons' educational and professional credentials. So, and, she told me where each one of them got their degrees from, some Ivy League. So, why am I mentioning this? Because that's the same question I had in my mind when she was telling me this stuff. Why are you mentioning this to me? What does your credentials and the credentials of your family have to do with the reason I'm here? See, I was very professional in dealing with her. I'm always professional in dealing with people. I just kind of go off the chain when I do YouTube videos, but I'm always very professional in the environment I'm in when I'm dealing with other people because I understand Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I understand how to have confidence and power in dealing with people. I understand another book I wrote called Skill with People. So I understand how to deal with people. But her credentials had nothing to do with why I was there. And so she then proceeded to tell me that she thought my message was best suited for the at-risk schools. Now, as I mentioned, I've already been speaking in this school district and several others at the time. I've spoken in magnet schools. I've spoken in all different environments. But she told me where she thought I was best suited for. And she said I was best suited for the at-risk schools. So now I have this person with all of her paper credentials trying to limit my outreach. And when she told me that, I checked her in. And I did it professionally, but I told her, I said, my message is best suited for whichever environment I walk into because I know how to customize my talks based on the audience. And I tell you something, after that meeting, I never received an invitation to speak in that school district ever again. I wonder why. About 3 years later, she actually emailed me asking if I wanted to participate in an event she was holding. And I replied and told her, and I wasn't professional at this moment. I replied and I told her I wasn't interested in anything she was affiliated with. You blackball me, you block what I'm trying to do, you try to limit my outreach, and then you reach a point where you're hosting an event and you need a speaker several years later and then you want to reach out to me? No, thank you. Do I need to tell you what color she is? See, degree professionals have destroyed the medical system. And I mean, this is kind of where, I started getting emotional when I started talking about this topic. And so I wrote things down so I wouldn't speak from the heart on here so I could kind of get through this. But doctors have basically a get out of jail free card when they harm you. They get the get out of jail free card, you know, in a situation if you have surgery, is if they do something to you that was not an issue when you entered the facility. Their get out of jail free card is they were trying to help you, and unfortunately, it caused another issue. See, degree doctors don't listen to patients, and that's one of the saddest things that we have to deal with because society have told these doctors that their credentials qualify them as God. On my last hospital visit, the doctor said he was going to give me a certain antibiotic. I told him every class of that antibiotic is actually dangerous to me, and he told me they were not. I told him again, do not give me that medication because of the damage it's going to cause my kidneys. He assured me again it would not damage my kidneys. And I reiterated again, do not put me on that medication. That class of antibiotics is harmful to my kidneys. He ignored me and he gave me the medicine anyway. 6 days later, he comes in and he said he took me off the medication. And I asked him why. He said, well, it's damaging your kidneys. And if you would let me do a biopsy, I can see what went wrong. I told him, no, we're not doing a biopsy. We know what went wrong. You did not listen. I asked him, what's my EFGR? He looked at me crazy. You see, as a regular nobody who doesn't have medical indoctrination, you as a patient or you as a regular everyday person ain't supposed to know medical terms. He looked at me and said, what? I repeated myself. What is my EFGR? He said, let me get back to you. I said, look at the monitor right in front of you and tell me what my EFGR is. He walked out of the room. And for the next 14 days, he came in and asked me to let him do a biopsy on me. And see, they put you in a weakened state, and then they try to pressure you to allow more procedures on you, which is increasing their income and the hospital revenue. On the 14th day, I told him, do not ask me to do a biopsy again. Because I had told my wife, I said, if he come in that day, that morning, I said, if he come in today and ask me to do another biopsy, I said, I might not be able to get up and move my legs. I said, I don't have any strength in my legs or anything right now. I said, well, my upper body's still strong. I said, I can choke the hell out of it. I said, because I'm tired of it. And see, like I said, it's a tactic they use as professionals, degree professionals against you in a weakened state in order to do more harm to you. The nurses started coming in and look at my chart and ask me, Mr. Jones, where do you go for dialysis? These are different nurses on different shifts. So each of them, I never had a need for dialysis. Now, those of you who know people who have needed dialysis, you know their kidneys are not functioning at all. Now, at the same time, I was in the hospital. They would come in and tell me and my wife that I also needed open heart surgery. Now, I didn't have a heart issue when I entered the hospital. So for the next 3 weeks, they kept trying to transfer me to another hospital for open heart surgery. One of my aunts came in, after my mother had died in the same hospital and told me, Myron, whatever you do, get out of here She said, but I'm gonna be honest with you. She said, you probably don't need to go to no other hospital. She said, these people don't mean you no well. She said, these people harming everybody in our family that come in here. That's one of my aunts. Because my mother had died while I was there. My brother-in-law had died while I was there. So 2 out of 3 members of our family that were in the hospital at the same time had already died. I was the only one that had survived. Thankfully, COVID was all the rage at the time. No other hospital had any beds to let them to it. And they maybe they did, but maybe that was the Most High, keeping me away from it because He knew I did not need heart surgery. See, I would go see a cardiologist months after I got discharged. And he literally told me, he said, Mr. Jones, be thankful there was no cardiac surgeon on site at the hospital you were in because they would have definitely pressured you every day in allowing them to do an open heart surgery operation on you. He said, I'm a cardiologist. I know how they think. He said they would have consistently bothered you and your wife every day until you relented and allowed it. And he said, but thank God I can see that your heart started repairing itself while you were laying in that bed at that hospital. See, I was angry even when I met the cardiologist because I never had a need for a cardiologist before. I was angry, and he could tell I was angry that day I went in. He knew I was angry, and his nurse practitioner knew I was angry. They could tell because I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't happy having to go see a cardiologist, and so I wasn't taking it out on him. I was just angry with the system. And see, the reason it took me several months to see him was because I couldn't walk when I entered the hospital. I couldn't walk after they discharged me. And right now, I still can't walk without the use of a cane. That was over 2 years ago. Still ain't able to drive. My wife has to drive me everywhere. Although I was driving my car the day before I went to the hospital. For a while, she was alternating between the two cars to keep mine operating. After a while, I told her to stop. But the people who treated me in the hospital were degreed professionals. You've been hearing the notifications in my phone. This is why I normally do my videos late at night, early in the morning. I'm recording this one in the middle of the day, and see my phone won't stop. But I still can't walk right today without the use of a cane. Still not able to drive. And like I said, my wife was alternating between both cars, keep mine operating, and I just told her to stop. And right now, the gas tank in my car is still practically full. Battery done died out on it. It's at the point where I can't even charge it anymore. So I have to get the battery replaced. And that's just where we are. But the people who treated me in the hospital were degreed professionals. See, my mother entered that hospital 7 days before me. My brother-in-law entered that hospital 6 days after me. My mother died at that hospital 10 days after entry. My brother-in-law died in that hospital 8 days after entry. My stepbrother's mother died in that hospital. Classmate from high school mother died in that hospital 2 days after entry. My best friend from school, his stepdad, who was one of the top pediatricians in the Houston area, went in this hospital, and the next day he couldn't talk. After 2 weeks, the family demanded that he be released from the hospital. Now he's passed on. The same friend's uncle entered this hospital, and just like me, right today, he can't walk on his own either. When I entered, I could walk. When I entered, I could drive. Right now, I cannot do either. Over 2 years later, can you imagine what it's like when you're in a hospital and you hear code blue, knowing that that's your mother's room number? And when your sister comes in later that day and tells you that mama is gone, can you imagine what that was like? And then you tear up and your sister say, you ain't got time to think about mama because you got to try to get better and get up out of here? When your shop teacher from high school visits you in a hospital and you say, hey boy, because my shop teacher knew my parents, my shop teacher knew my whole family. And my shop teacher say, hey boy, you ain't got time to mourn your mama. He say, you got to get up out of here. You got to get yourself together so you can get out of here. I was talking to that same sister the other day, and she told me this is the first time she's been able to grieve our mother. And the reason she said that, because she said she had been so worried about losing me during that whole period of time. She said now that I've started to slowly get better, she feels comfortable enough to finally be able to grieve our mother. Can you imagine what it's like when you hear Cold Blue and you know it's your brother-in-law's room and your other sister comes in later that morning and tells you her husband is gone? But these are degreed professionals in charge, like a childhood friend told me. So they can't be wrong, huh? According to her misplaced logic and thought process. See, I had three PCAs, those normally without medical degrees in many cases, who treated me better than the quote professionals. Now, I have a friend who is a licensed medical professional who lost his wife last year in a hospital on the operating table, but his wife also had a degree. So I was asked by this so called childhood friend, what did I personally do to make these medical professionals mistreat me under their care? Well, okay, let's go with that. Let's say I did do something to them to make me treat them that way when I enter the emergency room and I'm sitting in the wheelchair talking to the doctor and talking to the nurses that came and diagnosing my situation. Let's just say I was rude, but that's not my character. That's not my makeup. I don't do people like that, especially when somebody's caring for me. I even got on one of my family members because she was upset about something that was going on in the hospital. And I asked, I say, don't say anything to the staff. I say, because I have to remain here in the hospital with these people. But she didn't listen. She went down and told them that anyway about how I was being treated. I'm not going to get into all the details about what was going on when she went down there and said something to her. But let's say I did do something to them in the ER. And after the doctor comes in and he drains the fluid out of my knee, because I went in for knee pain in my knee. So how did I end up with all these other issues and a messed up spinal cord and a messed up wrist, messed up heart, messed up kidneys, messed up blood pressure, messed up cholesterol? How did I end up with all of this? How did I end up with bed sores? So let's just say, because like I said, in the ER doctor came and drained the fluid out my knee because it was infected. And then I fell asleep. So I didn't talk to nobody after initially entering, and I'm sitting in the ER in a wheelchair. I fell asleep. I know I fell asleep. So I wasn't talking to nobody else. They even told my wife to go ahead and go back home because during the COVID situation, there was nowhere for her to hang out. So she went back home. So let's just say I went into the hospital and I was blatantly disrespectful, even though I wasn't. Let's just say that me, Myron, was just downright rude and they punished me while I was under anesthesia for being rude. Let's go with that, okay? Let's go with that. What did my mother do to her? What did my brother-in-law do to her? What did Uncle Tommy do to her? What did my classmate's mom do to him? What did my friend's retired pediatrician stepdad who worked in the industry for years do to them? What did my stepbrother's mother do to them? What did my friend's wife do? Please tell me, what did all of these other people do to suffer their fate? See, we place so much emphasis on the medical industry, but the Bible says the whole head is sick. See, degree medical professionals don't have a clue about what it takes to heal the body. All they know how to do is follow the protocols that are put in place. You know, that's why they put down holistic and naturopathic medicine. That was the real healing long before allopathic medicine became the thing. Allopathic medicine is petroleum based. You know what petroleum is? You know, oil in your car. So most of your medicine is petroleum based. Why can't these people, with all of their degrees, formulate a product that doesn't have death as a side effect? I know a friend's wife, well, I ain't gonna say friend, we used to work together. His wife was on that cholesterol medication that starts with L. L caused her a brain aneurysm where she had to have an operation. Thankfully, she made it through that process. So they just changed the name, and now it's uh, starts with an A, but it's still on the market. And death is still a side effect. Muscle cramps are still a side effect. Type 2 diabetes is a side effect. Alzheimer's and dementia is a side effect. But these are degreed professionals making this stuff. How many other medications are prescribed that have death as a side effect? I was on another medication when they gave me high blood pressure in the hospital. Starts with an L. Violent cough. I mean, violent to the point where it will literally hurt to cough. I was sleeping at night with a pillow on my face. That was the only way I could get a degree of decent sleep because if I coughed all night long, but if I slept with a pillow over my nose and mouth, I could actually sleep without coughing. And when I call the doctors and ask them what's going on with this violent cough that I have since I left the hospital, oh, that must be your allergies acting up. I ain't never had no allergies. So why did I come see y'all now all of a sudden I have allergies? But that's degree professionals. After all of these years, why haven't degreed medical professionals been able to formulate medicines that don't cause detrimental and deadly side effects? You got medicines out there that cause paralysis. You know, they're degree professional, right? See, when I was in the hospital, I wasn't able to talk for about 2 weeks after the initial surgery. That was the first surgery. Then when I went back in, when I came out the second time, I came out with a deformed wrist. So my wife had to be my mouthpiece. She asked questions to these professionals daily, got no answers. When I was able to talk, I had a lot of questions daily and got no answers. When I was able to talk and I started talking to the social worker in the hospital, she said, I'm going to take this to my higher ups and I'll get back. We never saw again until the day before they discharged me. That was 4 weeks prior when I told her my issue. Once I was first able to talk, called a friend who's been in the medical field at the time. I think she's been in the profession over 20 years now, but she had not long had left her profession she had worked in the emergency room for 17 years. And I called her one morning. I called about 8 a.m. because she's an hour ahead of me. And we communicated till around 5:30 p.m. that day. And when she left the hospital, she went into holistic practice and got her certifications and all of that stuff. I told her what was going on. And she then told me specific questions to ask them using medical terminology. The next day at 6 in the morning, they came in and told me and my wife, you being discharged today. See, now they knew I had either some real medical knowledge or they knew I knew someone with medical knowledge. So they all of a sudden had to get me out of the hospital. They sent me home. My wife kept asking him, how am I going to get him out of the car when we get home? He can't walk. He can't stand on his own. They gave her no answer. My wife asked him about my heart. She said, y'all said something was wrong with his heart for the last 3 weeks, and that's why he needed to be transferred to another hospital. And now you're just putting him out. No response. They talked about sending me to a facility of theirs for physical therapy. And when she asked about that, she got nothing. I was in such pain that when my wife was driving me home and she drove over the slightest crack in the road, the slightest bump in the road, any, it didn't matter, I would scream because I was in such pain. The slightest movement, bump in the road, if she hit the brakes too hard, it caused me severe pain and I would just scream. Now, can you imagine what it was like riding in the car in so much pain and your wife is in the driver's seat crying because of the pain she knows you experiencing and she can't do anything about it? She's trying to be as careful as she can driving the vehicle. And then before we get home, we get a phone call from the hospital telling us they forgot to give us my discharge paperwork and we had to turn around and do it all over again. And for the next 8 months, I had to lay in the bed because I couldn't walk at all or sit up for any extended period of time. And once I began to use a walker, it hurt so much because something happened to my wrist while in the hospital. And for some reason, there are no x-rays to be found, although they said they x-rayed my wrist on 3 separate occasions when I kept complaining in the hospital. They brought the x-ray machine in and did it. I watched them do it, but there are no x-rays of my wrist. And my so-called friend asked, what did I do to make the doctors treat me poorly? But I had 5 doctors from 4 different disciplines and 5 different facilities all asked me the same question. Mr. Jones, did they drop you in the hospital? When I told one that I didn't know, her reply was, that wasn't a question. She also told me she had never seen the damage in the body of a man my age. She said she had only seen that in her entire career in men who were in their 80s and 90s. And I'm a long way off from that. So my so-called formally educated friend said I did something to receive the treatment I got. And 5 medical doctors said they did something to me in the hospital. One doctor even asked to see some of my records, and when she reviewed them, she said, Mr. Jones, these people tried to kill you. An attorney who's not licensed in Texas told me, Myron, these people tried to kill you. Now, good luck finding an attorney trying to take your case in the state of Texas if you get harmed in a facility. Texas legislators passed a law in 2003 that capped medical damages at $250,000, and the lawyer gets 40% of that. And if you still owe any medical charges at the time of your awarding, if you get fortunate enough, you have to pay those medical bills out of your portion of the settlement. Now, I'm not going to even tell you what another attorney told me about why you can't find a medical malpractice attorney. So your legislators are mostly degreed attorneys, aren't they? So these degreed law professionals have destroyed the medical and legal industry, and these degreed law professionals have also destroyed government and politics. The two most respected professions in this country are doctors and lawyers. The two most dangerous professions in this country are doctors and lawyers. So tell me again, why do you think credentials are important? It's because this system told you who deserves respect and who doesn't.